God's timing, right? God's timing, waiting on the Lord. Lord, why am I waiting? Why does it seem like everything you ask me to do takes so much time? Why does it seem like nothing happens when I want it? Why do I have to ask and ask and ask and ask over and over again for you just to hear me, for you to meet me where my prayers are? Why is it the persistent widow who kept asking the judge for what she wanted? Why is that the way in which I am intended to model my prayer life? God, why can't you just answer my prayer when I ask you? Why am I waiting? Waiting is a difficult subject for many of us because God's promises are always attached to time. They're attached to waiting, they're attached to a season, they're attached to preparation. And it can seem like waiting takes an extraordinary amount of time just to get even a little closer to where we think we want to go. And it seems like there's almost this divide, right? Like this chasm of people who are waiting. And then on the other side, there are people who have proclaimed to have waited and they have what they say they waited for, right? So if you're on the side of waiting and you haven't necessarily seen the fulfillment of the promises God has made, you might at certain points feel a little bit like the children of Israel leaving Egypt, wandering around for 40 years, wondering what on earth is taking so long? Why is this so hard? Why is it you only want to give us daily provision? Why is it that we just keep going around and around and our complaining and murmuring is an issue when, in captivity, at least we knew what to expect. At least when we were under the reign of Egypt, we knew where our provision would come from on a regular basis. But now you have us in the middle of the wilderness without comforts, without the things we're used to. And we're just expected to be obedient and follow your voice. Sometimes we can read the scriptures and we can see them, like the people in there, and we can see them like heroes. Or in other cases, we can see them like villains. Like, oh my goodness, children of Israel, just be patient. Just do what God told you to do, right? But when you think of the length of time in which they waited to be released from captivity, how often they were crying out to be thrust into a wilderness for 40 years and to struggle to even do that. I think sometimes we miss the fact that we are very much the villain in the story, right? We don't like to resonate with that or we don't like to connect with that. We like to think like we're patient, we're willing to hold on to God's promises in a different way. And the fact is, that's hard. That is extraordinarily hard. And we might go through seasons where we're better at it, and then other seasons where we're just weary. And it seems like we are in a drought, and all we are doing is just saying, listen, if you're not going to do it, God, at least let me turn back. At least let me go back to Egypt where I knew what to expect. I don't like this place of relying on you every single day for this faith, the daily faith. I'll shamelessly plug the video about faith that I did recently, which is talking about the different types of faith. So, one of which being daily provision. How do we rely on God for daily provision? And how do we rely on God for daily provision when it's not just daily provision in terms of our overall needs, but when things get really dry and it's just manna from the sky. That's it. I'm just waiting for the sky to fall in which I can get food. How do we continue and maintain and stay connected to that? So, for starters, I think a good place maybe to kind of add is that waiting reveals something really important that sometimes we forget, which is how much do we really want it? Now, I don't know about you, but there are times in which I'm asked to wait for something. And, like, let's say, for example, I want to return something in the store Or I want to go to a restaurant that I really like, and they say to me, it's a 2-hour wait. And I think, I don't want it that badly. I can go somewhere else. I more want to eat right now. I don't really want this bad enough that I would wait this long for it. And that's kind of the challenge sometimes when we're called into waiting, is that it really tests us. How bad do I really want this? Do I really want it God's way? Do I really, really desire His will? Or am I just hungry and I'll just go somewhere else? Like I'll just go to a different restaurant because the fact is, yeah, maybe I like, I don't know, McDonald's. But if McDonald's is a 2-hour wait, I'm just gonna go to Taco Bell. Like I'm not gonna wait for that. I'm trying to make this like a little more universal for people who are in the States who maybe don't know some of our Canadian restaurants. So how then do I wait for something if I know I can just get fed somewhere else, right? And oftentimes we step out of God's timing because we don't want His will bad enough sometimes. Like we actually just want to fulfill the need. And I'm not exempt from this either because it can be easy to want to step out and just make things happen in your way. Like, God, why do you have to control everything? God, why do you have to always be the one who opens and closes doors? Especially when you come from living a life in which you were your own God and you were the one making the decisions about your life, it's extraordinarily difficult to relinquish control and let the Lord really lead, right? Like to really live our life as a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable before God, like to lose our life so that we can find it, to lose control of our life so we can find it. Like, how do we lay it all before Him? How would we be even willing to die for the name of Christ, right? Like, even when we think about that moment with Jesus in the garden, not my will, but your will. I don't want to do this, but I will. I'll surrender it. I'll surrender it to the point of death, to the point of the ultimate sacrifice. And if we're being conformed into His image, how can we be conformed into the image of Christ if we cannot be yielded and submitted to the Father the way He was?